man, it's snowing outside.
I know it. It's snowing. I'm here. You're here. Are we ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready, buddy. Let's go.
All right. Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for listening in on Hanging with the Honchos with my boy DJ EJ, and I'm Ryan from Detroit. What's up, DJ EJ? How you doing today?
What's up, man? How are you? I'm over here drinking a Dunkin' Donuts black dark roast because Starbucks is closed, but Dunkin', they don't quit. They don't quit.
The world runs on Dunkin'.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm drinking a Starbucks Keurig out of my favorite coffee cup, Jack Surf Shop, right here. My brother.
Yeah. Yep. I'm plastic cup. So anyways, dude, you and I'm totally just jumping into this because we have 30 minutes, and
Go.
I know we cannot contain ourselves to 30 minutes because you and I were talking earlier about camera stuff, and we said it's got to be the topic today.
Absolutely.
And so I'm pushing you right into it because I think we have a lot of interesting points. So why don't you kick it off with a couple things about this whole camera discussion? All us camera nerds are going to listen to and say, what the heck are they talking about?
All right. Okay, so we're going to talk about the feel good of photography, but I think before we do that, let's step back as we often do, and let me tell you about the time when I hung the camera up for 10 years.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, because I think this is where kind of all this conversation went to earlier today. So we'll let the audience and the listeners in on this. So back in the day, I ran a wedding photography business. Started at 17, ran it until about 21 years old, and fell in love with the creative aspect of it. And then kind of got behind the gear in the technical side, but I shot film the whole time, about 60 weddings with film. Fujifilm, baby, love that stuff. But here's the deal. I was, developing my relationship with my wife at the time. I was developing my relationship with the Lord at the time, my faith. And it got to a point where I felt a little bit compromised. And I kind of feel like, Eric, a lot of people deal with this and they either suppress it, because I know a lot of Christians that are YouTubers and vloggers. And I kind of feel like they suppress it, to be honest, because I can see it in their face and sometimes hear it in the way that they talk about this stuff. Gear's fun to talk about, but it ended up kind of stealing my heart away in a little bit, in a way. And I got to the point where I felt a little bit convicted and just prayed through it and felt like, okay, it's time to set it down. I don't want this to be a vice on me and my life. I was consumed with it. So I hung the camera up for 10 years, eventually got back into some small point and shoots, and eventually got some stuff that we've got today. And I love it, but I'm more focused on the creative aspect of it rather than chasing the gear. And I feel like it's a healthier relationship with cameras, as crazy as it sounds. But it sounds like you've kind of had a similar experience, right? Recently.
Oh, yeah. You and I were talking about this earlier. I did. So, to your point that you made at the end of that little blurb there, the camera a function, what you're using it for and its purpose is more important. I think that's where we're going to take this. But to kind of close off on that, yeah, man, I spend so much time in forums and like on YouTube videos and researching full frame versus micro four thirds versus medium format versus Fuji versus Canon versus whatever. And anybody that's had like gas syndrome totally know what I'm talking about. And two things happen from that. Three things really. One, it steals all your time away from your mental time, right? From your kids, your family, and more importantly, like even spending that in the Lord. And then the second thing is I spent so much time like switching gear that it's like you never really get to learn your gear and find out the purpose of photography and then actually become a photographer instead of a gear nerd, which I think 95% of people that pick up a camera do. And the last thing is that you feel kind of guilty. Like we're on a budget as a family over here. We're working through things, and you're over here buying gear. And I'm making it work. I'm buying cheap and selling high and all this kind of different stuff. But at some point, it's like you just need to cut it out. You just need to focus on your family and let photography be a way for you to tell your story, either with your family or some project you want to do. And that, I think that's where you and I got into the discussion of the function or the form of the camera and why gear doesn't so much matter. Well, it does in certain ways, but it doesn't matter as much as people make it out to be versus like all the different things that are going on. And I'll close off by saying this because I'm going to go off on a rant on my YouTube channel about this new Canon R5 that's coming out. I don't know if you've heard about it or not, but it's like the 8K internal with autofocus, 4K, 120, dual pixel, 10-bit internal, all this stuff. I won't give it totally away. It doesn't matter. If you tell a crappy story, your story still sucks in 8K. That's all. Okay. Anyways.
Yeah, totally agree. No, it's interesting you say that because I feel like for me, and you've known me for a long time now, but I've set rules kind of in my own life and sort of like boundaries that I don't ever try to cross. And I think it comes with my relationship with God or my relationship with my wife, obvious things
Right.
there. But I think I kind of adapt that to cameras, adapt that to work. Like you and I know, we've talked about things like that a lot. Like I just think differently, act differently. Some people love it, some people don't. But I do the same thing with cameras, and I jumped full into Sony. And I know you and I joke about this, but I jumped full into
Right.
Sony almost 3 years ago because I was able to sell my old Canon glass, my really
Yeah.
old Canon like 30D at the time, and I was able to muster up 1,200 bucks. And at the time, the best tech that I could get for what I was looking for, size, form factor, all that, was the Sony system, and the eye autofocus was huge, and we could get into that
Yeah.
too if you want, because I used to focus recompose for 60 weddings on film, talk about sweating it out. But then I started to realize, like, it really is about the story, and it's about setting up your gear to a point where it's second nature, which is what I was doing with my Canon gear back in the day. And it also kind of brings us to a funny point right now where, from the photography side, like not video, but from a photo side, I'm really a little bit uninspired, and I've been kind of diving into film cameras. And I know it's kind of cliche and the timing of all of it in this hipster movement, but dude, I loved film. I was kind of talked myself out of it back in the day. It's becoming a little bit more popular, like a resurgence, but I'm realizing it's an experience I'm looking for with the camera
Yeah.
when I'm shooting photos that I don't get on my A6500, honestly. And even though I've got this little RX100 that's been a beast pocket rocket for video, makes great photos. Most people could never tell the difference. But dude, let's talk about
Yeah.
like experience on that and how it
All right.
feels, because this is a big deal for us.
Let me take you down a path on what you're just talking about.
Yeah.
What about it for film? And I have a feeling on it, and I'll answer it, I guess. But let me put the question in for you.
Yeah.
What about it for film? Do you like about so much? But there's nostalgia as part of it. I think you mentioned that.
Yep.
But like, what else? What is it?
I think it's the opposite of what digital is. I love to overexpose, and you know this even from my cameras. Like, I love to overexpose and really push the latitude on film.
Right.
I love the fact that it does slow me down a little bit, but it's almost like every shot wasn't perfect. I couldn't make every shot perfect, right? Like if it was grossly underexposed, or I was trying to do this high contrast image with some backlight and it didn't work out, it just didn't work out. And I feel like it was exciting to go through all of the photos and find the 75% of keepers that I was going to pass along. It just slowed things down. It was a different experience. It was about photography and creating art versus
Yeah.
I have to document everything now. And I think that's the part that's driving me crazy about digital right now.
Yeah, so I think you touched on where I'm at, and I think we agree on this. For film, it's the same way, and I can do it for digital, but there's something about digital that like inherently makes you want to not do this, especially in like an iPhone world. But for film, for me, I can't review my photo.
Yeah.
In fact, I can't even like edit my photo, right? And I can't. There's no instant gratification, and so the camera leaves me no choice but to simply get in the moment and think about my composition and think about the story I want to tell, and that's it. Like, it doesn't let me do anything else. Now, the flip side of it is that you can't get the photo right away, and then you can edit raw, or scans if you want. So there's some way to do that. And of course, there's a whole different slew of restrictions in terms of autofocus speed and that kind of stuff. But it's that part of it that makes me love it. And so I focus in on the story, and I focus in on my composition and how I want to tell the story. And for digital, if I'm going to bring our conversation to digital, I'm going to show you this little Olympus camera that's in my hand right here. If you guys can see this, let my camera focus, if it will. It's like trying to lock my face. There it goes. I have this little Olympus EM10 Mark II. I just got this. I got it on sale from Adorama for like $299, brand new with the kit lens. So you sell the kit lens, maybe it only costs you $225 or something out of pocket. It's not the best camera. It's a micro four thirds sensor. It doesn't do continuous autofocus for crap, and it's an older micro four thirds sensor at that. And it doesn't even matter. To your point about the RX100, you took pictures with that and nobody could tell. And for me, and I think this is where I want to take this conversation, is this camera, to me, if I were to lose it or break it, I wouldn't cry about it. Whereas if I had a $3,000, $4,000 camera in my pocket, I'd be so worried about losing it or breaking it that I wouldn't even use it. The other thing is this camera's small. So I'm going to put a pancake, it's not on here now, it's coming tomorrow, but I'm putting a pancake lens on it so I can throw it in my jacket pocket. So now I have something that's pocketable, and I don't really care about too much if it gets banged up. And that's going to inspire me and allow me to create a lot more versus people carrying around these big 1DX cameras and these 5D Mark IIIs and other things. Even my Panasonic G9 that I'm on now with a decent lens on it, it doesn't fit in a, like, I'm not taking that thing out. It's just too big.
Right.
And so I don't shoot with it. And you mentioned about where you're at with things and uninspired. What I'm inspired to do right now is to tell stories, right? To capture my family's moment, to tell my life story through pictures, and even like do side projects. Like I want to do zines and all the different kind of stuff. And if I only print it for myself, that's fine. If I put it out there to do some kind of cause or whatever, that's even better. And I don't think it even matters. I was listening to a guy on YouTube, Daniel Milner. He's on this channel called Advancing Your Photography, and he always talks about, he'll never talk about gear, but he made one video. He shoots with the Fuji X-T2, like today, so it's not the latest. It's 2 generations behind. With a manual focus Chinese Nifty 50 knockoff.
Nice.
That's it.
Nice.
I think he has other lenses, but he never shoots, and that's all he shoots with. And he chose the Fuji because it felt like his old film camera. And he's like, gear doesn't matter. He's like, I belong to this group of like amazing photographers, and we've been meeting for years and years and years and years to talk about photography stuff, and we never ever talk about gear because it's just the sign of like an amateur or crappy photographer.
I love it, man.
It's about the stories and your passion and your project and everything you want to tell. And I'm like, dude, like that's what it is. And I'll finish off. I know I've been talking a lot, but I'll finish off with this. Last year or 2 years ago, I brought a Panasonic GX85. It's a little micro four thirds camera up north with one lens, the pancake lens I was talking about. And it's all I brought with me. That's it. I couldn't do telephoto. I couldn't go wider. That was it. Dude, it was the, first of all, the best photo book I've put together so far. And it was my best experience because it fit in my pocket. And I had no option but to shoot with that lens and tell my story of that vacation for our family through that. And and that's how I knew, like, at that time, like, that's where I wanted to be. And I was always bouncing back and forth on what camera I wanted to tell that story with. But I know that's where I need to be. And I think that's what it is for film too. So that was a long-winded way of just saying, like, those restrictions inspire me to, like, tell stories and see things a certain way.
Well, and I would say too, man, that's beautiful. To add on to that, I think when you were talking and I was thinking about film, one of the things I loved about weddings and film photography is I didn't get a second chance. As crazy as that sounds, like I would set it up and it forced me to get to know my camera and use my camera to the point where I'm dialing up exposure comp and dialing it down, right? I'm rating film at 320, that's 400 speed to get those milky highlights and overexpose it a bit, right? Pull up the shadows. Like, I'm doing all that. As soon as I load it in the camera, then I'm not thinking about it anymore. And I don't have to go and post-process. Look, I worked at a photo lab for a year during my wedding photography days, actually. I wanted the experience. I needed a job part-time. So I did it like nights and weekends, essentially. And I would density and color correct all these different, photos coming in, whether it were portrait sessions or baby sessions or weddings. And honestly, like, I gained the experience, but it wasn't my favorite part. Like, the best part for me is taking the shot, seeing it on print or film or on screen, and then sharing it with the world. Like, that's it. So I never wanted to become a post-processor. And that's, this about my video work too, dude. Like, I find ways to get it set up straight out of camera so I don't even have to color grade, because to see a muted photo come out or a muted video come out that's going to get bumped up and the curves are going to get shifted around in digital, like, that's not me. That's not the way I think. People call me crazy. You know this. Like, I dial my camera into black and white mode, so I purposely can't change it back to color, right? Like, even though it would make sense to shoot everything in color and just go, and that's not me. So for me, it's just a real experience that came from my film days. And I think what that brings me to the next conversation is, film cameras, the nostalgia of that, and where I know it's a movement right now, but that movement and the conversation around it kind of pushed me back to it a little bit, which I'm loving. And I'll pull out a camera here in a second, my Minolta. But the second thing is it's driving me to a new purchase. My birthday's coming up, and I'm going to find a way to spend some money. And again, do that whole, like, trick yourself, box yourself in, not going to go and spend $1,000, like, find something super used that's older. But dude, like, if you look at this Minolta right here, this Hymatic AF2, cool story. I was in Chicago for a work trip. I made a video about this, and it was kind of funny because I like to challenge myself and be funny about things. But I walked like 2 miles in the rain in my, like, dress shoes and my suit jacket to a thrift store before hitting a plane. And thank you, Lord. He always does find a way to bless, man. Like, they said, no, cameras, we just sold them all last night. Somebody came and took them all, and I found this Samsonite bag. I was like, hey, what's that? And behind the counter, pulled it open, and it was this Minolta Hymatic AF2. Been shooting Fujifilm. The results coming out of it are exactly what I like. It's kind of the feel of it. The size of it's a little boxy, but it's a little bit nostalgic. So all I'll say is this has pushed me, it's inspired me to go and take photos, versus just all my video work on this A6500 or this RX 100. I'm not inspired. It's inspired me to take photos. And what it has done, which is where we'll lead into, and I know you're going to be like, dude, I told you. But it really makes me want to get into like a Fuji X100 with the color scheme of that. I mean, you know all the specs that you can rattle off, dude, to help me out. But I just think Fuji straight out of camera colors really matches the Fuji emulations on the film side. And the nostalgia of it, the size of it, everything's pocketable. It's just exactly what I think I'm looking for in the experience of taking photos on digital to mimic my film experience. What do you think about that?
No, the X100 is exactly that, right? You got a fixed focal length 23 f2 lens. That's a 35 millimeter equivalent, which I think you and I both agree somewhere between 28 and 40 is probably the best spot to be for one lens to tell a story, somewhere in there. Right, it's got an f2 aperture and an APS-C sensor, so you can get enough bokeh if you're close enough.
Yep.
It's got this like form factor that your Himatic has in a way, right? So it's not too big, and it's got like these film controls and dials. Fuji's fantastic. Like, I love Fuji. I think they make the best APS-C camera out there. In fact, I'll even say, like, I think they are probably the best camera company out there. A lot of people will freak out and say no way.
I get it,
but they have the APS-C on lock, and then they skipped full frame because they don't want to compete in that space and they're in medium format. And I think as like things progress down the road and camera sales contract, that's you're going to see people shooting medium format.
I'd love that.
And like APS-C,
right?
That. But anyways, I digress. I'm with you on that. I'm shooting Micro Four Thirds right now, and there's reasons for it. But Fuji is one of my favorite companies, and it is for the film emulations. You can literally put that thing on Acros. You can put it on Classic Chrome or Velvia or whatever, and you can get a fantastic image. You can't see it because we're doing this.
Yeah.
I'm holding this up right here. This is a picture of my family. I shot this on a Fuji X-T3. I no longer have my X-T3, which that's a different story. I'll touch on that in a second.
Yeah.
But this was straight out of camera, and this picture is fantastic.
I remember that.
It looks really great. Actually why I like it so much is a story behind it. It's my family, my wife's family, and then it's my mother-in-law's like long lost son that was reunited. I don't know if I even told you the story, right? But if I didn't, I could. It's a crazy story. I ended up getting rid of the Fuji because for me, when I'm shooting video stuff or things I'm doing, I needed IBIS and I needed a flip screen, and so I'm shooting on a G9 with Leica lenses, which I think looks fantastic as well.
Great quality, dude.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
But if I were to go back, like this Olympus is a $300 camera. But if and when I have the money to spend on a more expensive camera that does what this does, I would look at the X100 series. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And X100F or 100V or whatever, and you just put it in your pocket and you go. And I don't ever want to treat my camera like it's some kind of crown jewel. Like I want to just have it on me and bang it around and not care about it. And I think that's why I'm so turned on to a cheap camera that still serves its purpose. But no, Fuji's a fantastic company. I think they're killing it more than anybody right now. Obviously, Canon's now trying to win the spec war, which I think you and I would agree that doesn't matter so much.
Not interested, yeah.
Not interested. I'm not interested. Like I like talking about it because I like geeking out on tech stuff.
Yep.
But like in reality, I know if it was a big brick and it has these massive lenses, which I know it does, and like it's shooting 8K or shooting like 14, 16-bit, whatever, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
You know what? I got to say this. I got to jump because you brought something to mind that we talked about earlier, and it's right down the path that we need to head. So when you start chasing specs and you're chasing gear based on specs, you end up spending.
It's never good enough.
No, but you end up spending thousands of dollars. And you and I talked about the X100 earlier. Like, could I technically afford a $1,000, $1,200 brand new X100 V or whatever they're on? Like, yeah, I could make it work. Like, I could go figure out a way to make it work. But there's something that comes along with that. Now it's the latest tech. I gotta have this. Like it's the best. What about the next one? Then you get in this whole like mode of like the gas syndrome, they call it, right? But you get into this whole thing. And for me, when I talk about X100, I'm looking at like the third version, X100T, because the price point's there. If you find a good used deal on it, it has enough of the features that I'm looking for. I think it's got some really good face recognition, and the S didn't have it. But here's the thing, man. And you and I talked about this at $400, $450 for that type of camera. Like now I don't care about the quirks of the camera because I know I didn't pay $1,000 for it. I'm going to work around those quirks, but it's the experience. Again, like, dude, this Himatic Minolta, it's point and shoot basically. I rate the film. It does have this, the rating here that on the ISO setting. So I'm rated at 320, which I love. But other than that, you're going to point and you're going to shoot, you're going to focus, recompose. It doesn't really work that well. I understand it because I literally found this at the thrift store for $30, beautiful condition for $30, really thankful. But it's the same thing on the X100. If I know what I'm getting myself into, similar to my RX100 that I got for less than half the price of what it used to go for new because I got it used. It's okay if it's done, has some dings. It's okay if there's some quirks to it. It's about the experience and like you're rekindling that excitement of photography and not really worried about now I've got the best Fuji camera that they just put out. Like I never want to chase that stuff, man. I want to make my own memories with this gear versus anything else.
I'll say two things that you just touched on. One, you make a fantastic point. When you buy a camera and you concede to its imperfections and you concede to it not being the latest tech because you know what your intended purpose for it's going to be, I think that's like how you start winning.
It's liberating.
If you buy a camera because you're like, oh my gosh, it has 422 10-bit internal and it shoots 28 frames a second with continuous autofocus and blah, 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 as if somehow that's going to make you a better videographer or better photographer. And then like literally 2 months later, the next brand comes out with something slightly better, right? Oh, that has CF Express cards in it now. That writes faster.
Yep.
Like, You're never satisfied. You're never satisfied. And I'm going to transition this to my YouTube channel because
Sure.
I'm like an embarrassment, dude. I'm a joke because I've done this for like 2 years and I've like reached this understanding in my photography chase or whatever. And so I know now what's important to me and what I like and what I don't like. And I've chased gear forever. So if you went to my YouTube channel, you would realize how many cameras I've used and switched. It's like 30. It's insane. It's embarrassing, like I said. But the thing that really kind of ticks me off is like now that I want to take my channel to this path of focusing on projects and other things and still touch on gear here and there, I know my subscriber count and my YouTube count, like watch count, is going to go way down.
Sure.
At least for the time being, because YouTube is a search engine and people go in and they're searching what's the best camera and then they start going to like, best autofocus, compare these two cameras and all this different stuff. And my YouTube channel, which I don't even put any effort into, has grown to like 800 and something subscribers, 800 subscribers because of that.
Yeah.
And like, it's embarrassing, it's like, and I feel like I'm doing such a disservice and not only to myself, but to people that watch it. Cause like, oh, thank you so much for comparing these two. And it's like, yeah, you're welcome. I had the same question. So I'm glad it benefited you, but it probably doesn't really matter unless you know exactly what you need to do with it and what you're going to use it for. Totally. So yeah, the gear stuff is like 90% of people that are interested in photography are amateurs concerned about gear. And I think hitting this point, not that I say I'm a pro, it's just, I know now, like I've known for a while that the chasing of the latest and greatest just sucks away the enjoyment that can come out of it.
It sure does, man. And getting behind some older gear that works, like it worked for you 3 years ago and it worked really well.
It's got to work.
Why doesn't it work now?
It's got to work.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And that's my thing.
Like photography didn't change that much. Like you can still take photos. Unless your old camera couldn't keep up with like some new gig that you got as a sports photographer, then there's interest. There's a reason to look.
For sure.
But pictures haven't changed, man. Like picture's a picture.
No, and there's I don't want to say, like the old, what are they called? Like the Holgas and all those other toy cameras and things. Like I get it. Like I'm a little over that. But I mean, you can see right here, like I got one of these on my desk, the Canonette, right? The QL17, sweet camera. I love it. I'm thankful I found it for $15. Wasn't working. Got it reworking, opened it up, and got the shutter and all that stuff working. But here's the thing. Great camera. Probably won't get rid of it unless I really want to fund something else because I like shooting with it. But the rangefinder style is cool. I mean, I know it's a little bit, depending on if you zone focus, I like to shoot a lot wide open because I like portraits and things like that, people shots, pretty wide open. It takes a lot of getting used to on the rangefinder side. So honestly, as crazy as this sound, people are going to shoot me for this or yell at me. This Minolta Himatic that's fully auto, that does a great job metering, by the way, in camera, versus my Canonette, much different camera. This one's 43 years old. This one's like 35 years old, 32 years old. I actually prefer the cheaper Minolta from a shooting experience over the Canonette, simply because the Canonette on the metering is shutter priority, and this other one doesn't let you choose. So I can't choose aperture priority. You can fool it with an ND filter and knock down some of the light, but it comes down to the experience. And I almost, you and I talked about this a little bit ago. I got on a tangent last week. I almost went out to buy the small Olympus Epic, Mu 2 point and shoot, they're like $350. They're so over extended on
Priced.
cost right now, overpriced. And I backed up and I was like, what do I really want out of all this? Which is what I've done often. And it's, I want the experience that I've had shooting film. And if I can do it with digital, all the better, because it's going to cost me nothing once I have the camera and I can create more, right? Versus having to wait for everything. I'll still shoot film in parallel, but that's really what it comes down to when you really break it down and get away from the emotion. I want that experience in creating those types of photographs, the ones that I like to make, especially portraiture.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. Like I said, I'm waiting for this pancake lens to come in. And I'm going to put this on this Olympus right here. I'm going to put it in my pocket, and I'm gonna start documenting a lot of COVID related stuff. And my goal is to make a zine that I can sell, and all the profits go to, like, supporting somebody. And I'm so focused on that. And I know bringing this big G9, I say big, it's Micro Four Thirds camera, but it's like the biggest Micro Four Thirds camera out there. Taking that bigger camera, I wouldn't get the photos I needed, because I wouldn't be able to bring it everywhere that I need to. And so from that perspective, that's where gear does matter, right? Yeah. Like, okay, now if you're gonna like be walking around every day with your family and bringing this into grocery stores and retail stores and whatever, and you walking around with a big DSLR around your shoulder is not reasonable, then I say it matters. But like, you're talking about 12 stops of dynamic range versus 13 and a half.
Yeah.
Who the heck cares, dude? Like, 20 frames a second versus 18. Oh, that's slightly better. Like, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter.
No, and you make a really solid point. Like, if you're not going to bring the camera with you, you're not going to be able to create the memory, right? Like, when I look at photographs, I remember the emotion, the memory of my family, and like the trips that we've taken, the vacations. But oftentimes when we travel, I want great quality, so my bigger camera stays, comes with us, and then it's a hassle, right? So you're not gonna be able to look at that photo and be like, oh, it was awesome, and I remember that experience. You won't create those experiences or document them and create art around them as much if you don't have a camera that really inspires you to do that. And that's what I'm after. I think that's what everyone's sort of 100%. After, but they get caught up in the mix of equipment. Which, hey, I'm saying that, man. Like, I got one camera I'm recording on. I got 3 cameras on my desk here. Like, I get it, but part of that's the film stuff too. Like, I've had the digitals for 3 years. That
experience and all the cameras I've been through, I should send you the list so you can put it in editing here. But it's insane. It's insane. Dude, by the way, we have 2 minutes until the shut-off time on the camera. We have 30-minute record limits. Oh my gosh, I need to buy GH5 unlimited record time. I can't do it.
Oh, no, I'm joking. That's exactly what people do, though. It's so funny.
Yeah, I know. So, but anyways, it keeps our podcast at 30 minutes.
So yeah, officially, man, like, if things work out, I may be shooting Fuji here in a few weeks, and I haven't done that since like the F10 point and shoot, which was terrible experience, by the way. But yeah, I'm not getting rid of my stuff, man. I need it for this, right? Like, for all our video work. But
all right.
No, man. Anything to add? Anything closing on your end?
No, that's it. I would say the joy of photography really is telling stories, and so find the gear that you'll bring with you and that you can use. And I would say constraints or limits are actually sometimes a good thing. Don't get lost carrying 8 lenses and a big camera bag. That's stupid. Unless you need them, like, for a purpose you know about, and go tell your story. And print. I would say print, man. I would say print.
Agree. No, I love it. And if you guys have questions on photography, on cameras, you can ask Eric or I, ping us or hit us up in the comments below. And with that, so we can beat this 30-minute time limit, we will wrap it. Thanks for everything. Thanks for all the support, guys. And we'll see you on the next one. So with that, honcho me, bro.
Knuckle.